On September 28, 2023, residents of Constantia, one of Cape Town's most affluent neighborhoods, watched in shock as police vehicles swarmed a luxury estate. What no one knew was that the king and queen of Cape Town's mafia were about to meet their end. Inside, Ralph Stanfield and Nicole Johnson, the so-called king and queen of Cape Town's underworld, were in the middle of packing. Passports on the table, suitcases half full. A last-minute escape was in progress, but they were too late. Before they could slip away, officers burst through the doors and arrested them. This marked the beginning of the end for the most feared power couple in South Africa's criminal world. For years, their empire thrived on fear, corruption, and absolute control. But now, everything was crumbling. However, this was just the beginning. What came next sent shockwaves through South Africa's criminal underworld. Every associate, every ally, every enforcer who had once sworn loyalty to the Stanfields now found themselves in the crosshairs. The empire wasn't just falling, it was imploding. This is the story of how Cape Town's underworld king and queen finally met their downfall. Cape Town has long been a battleground for organized crime, with extortion, gang violence, and political corruption intertwining in a toxic mix. At the heart of this storm stood Ralph Stanfield. Alleged to be one of the most powerful figures in Cape Town's criminal hierarchy, Stanfield didn't just operate in the shadows. He infiltrated the very structures meant to uphold law and order. But Stanfield wasn't alone. His wife, Nicole Johnson, played a crucial role in legitimizing their criminal enterprise. While Stanfield's reputation was built on muscle and intimidation, Johnson gave the operation a polished, business-like facade. Together, they formed a duo that extended its grip far beyond traditional gang activities. Historically, South Africa's underworld was dominated by trafficking, smuggling, and turf wars. But by the mid-2010s, criminal enterprises discovered an even more profitable venture: construction tenders. The government poured billions into housing and infrastructure projects, and Cape Town, which was one of South Africa's most rapidly developing cities, became a goldmine for those willing to bend the rules. Stanfield and Johnson saw an opportunity. Instead of robbing banks or dealing drugs, they realized they could rob the system itself, legally, on paper, and without a single. All they needed was a front. A seemingly legitimate business that could win government contracts while funneling money back into their criminal network. That's where Glomix House Brokers came in. On the surface, Glomix House Brokers appeared to be a normal construction and property development firm. It was fronted by Nicole Johnson, which gave it an air of legitimacy. After all, a woman-led business, especially one with the right political connections, could easily gain favor in government tenders. But behind the scenes, the company was allegedly nothing more than a shell, a tool used to manipulate tender processes, engage in fraud, and launder money. The scam was simple, but devastatingly effective. Glomix House Brokers would apply for major government contracts under the pretense of being a fully compliant Black Economic Empowerment (BEE) certified company. The BEE system, designed to uplift historically disadvantaged groups in South Africa, gives preference to businesses that meet certain ownership and employment equity criteria. However, the problem was that Glomix House Brokers allegedly falsified their BEE credentials. According to reports, the company submitted fraudulent BE certificates to secure multi-million rand contracts, effectively stealing opportunities meant for legitimate Black-owned businesses. Once these tenders were secured, the work was either poorly executed, subcontracted to gang-affiliated groups, or in some cases, never completed at all. Yet the payments continued to flow. But securing fraudulent tenders was just one part of the operation. Once Glomix House Brokers landed a contract, the real power of Stanfield's empire came into play. Rival construction firms, small business owners, and even government officials who tried to challenge them quickly found themselves facing brutal intimidation tactics. Construction sites across Cape Town were routinely targeted, and if a company refused to cooperate, they'd be met with sabotage, threats, or even. However, there were some projects these mafia gangs couldn't touch, one of them being the Symphony Way housing project. Symphony Way wasn't just another construction site. It represented hope for thousands of families waiting for decent housing in Delft, one of Cape Town's most underserved communities. With an ambitious budget of 500 million rands, that's about $26 million, it promised to deliver 3,300 state-subsidized homes for families desperately needing decent housing. Located east of Cape Town International Airport and bordered by the Belhar residential area, The project represented more than just buildings. It was about creating a community. For most construction projects in Cape Town, the unwritten rule was simple: pay the gangsters their protection fee or face the consequences. The notorious 28S gang and other criminal syndicates had turned construction extortion into a $1 million racket, controlling who built what and where across the city. But Symphony Way was different. From the beginning, it had been carefully protected with extra security measures and a team of dedicated officials determined to keep criminal elements at bay. It was a rare project that stood outside Stanfield's sphere of influence, a fact that infuriated the crime boss. For a man used to getting exactly what he wanted, resistance was never an option. In Ralph Stanfield's world, obstacles weren't worked around, they were erased, and to send a message, he set his sights on Wendy Kloppers, who was one of Cape Town's Environmental Affairs Department officials overseeing this project. Wendy Kloppers never saw herself as a threat. She wasn't a crusader or a rebel, just a dedicated official making sure construction projects met proper environmental standards. But in a city where gangsters dictated who built what, her insistence on playing by the rules made her a problem. On that February afternoon in 2023, that problem was dealt with. February 16, 2023. Wendy Kloppers pulled up to a construction site on Symphony Way in Delft. The dedicated official from Cape Town's Environmental Affairs Department had no idea that this routine inspection would be her last one. As Wendy's car entered the construction site, men emerged from a nearby vehicle. Without warning, they opened tore through Wendy's car, her on the spot. Her colleague, who was in the car with her, suffered multiple injuries but survived. News of Wendy's spread fast. This wasn't a street-level gang hit. It was an execution, a message carved in. But instead of silencing resistance, Stanfield had made a fatal miscalculation. What he saw as the simple removal of an obstacle had instead put the full force of law enforcement and the nation's attention squarely on his empire. For years, Cape Town's criminal underworld had thrived in the shadows, operating with near impunity. The police knew who pulled the strings, but proving it in court was another story. Witnesses vanished. Evidence had a way of disappearing. And when money couldn't buy silence, fear did. But Wendy Kloppers' changed everything. This wasn't just another gangland execution. It was a direct assault on the government, carried out in broad daylight. The public outrage was immediate and deafening, forcing law enforcement to act. A special task force was assembled, pulling in detectives from the Hawks, that's one of South Africa's elite crime-fighting units, alongside financial crime specialists and prosecutors well-versed in dismantling organized crime. And this time, the case wouldn't fall apart. The first breakthrough came quickly. Police identified Warren Lee Dennis, a feared hitman allegedly connected to Stanfield's organization, as the triggerman. His arrest was just the beginning. Police Commissioner Vusi Mthethwa told reporters, "We're not just looking at who pulled the trigger. We're going after everyone who gave the orders, who paid for it, who organized it. This stops now." As investigators dug deeper, they uncovered a web of corruption extending far beyond one. Financial records, witness testimonies, and surveillance evidence began painting a comprehensive picture of Stanfield and Johnson's criminal enterprise. On September the 28th, 2023, Ralph Stanfield and Nicole Johnson were arrested. Both were arrested on charges of car theft, assault, robbery, and fraud. Stanfield faced additional charges for possession of an unlicensed firearm found during the raid. But these were just the initial charges. Prosecutors were building towards something much bigger. When the couple appeared at Cape Town Magistrates Court on October 2nd, a crowd had gathered outside. Some were journalists, others were families of victims who had suffered under Stanfield's reign of terror. Inside, the judge denied bail to both defendants. Johnson's legal team made multiple appeals, citing concerns for her 15-year-old daughter, who was now without both parents. The Supreme Court of Appeal remained unmoved, dismissing her applications with the simple statement that they had no prospects of success. As the weeks passed, the investigation into Wendy Kloppers deepened. Police followed money trails, interviewed witnesses who were finally willing to speak, and pieced together evidence linking Stanfield directly to the assassination order. By December 2023, prosecutors announced new charges against the couple and conspiracy to commit. The kingdom they had built was crumbling beneath them. That same month, the investigation took an even more dramatic turn. Cape Town's city manager announced that an intense investigation into gang-related extortion had led to the blacklisting of 12 companies in the Western Cape, all of them linked to Nicole Johnson. But the most explosive revelation was yet to come. Stanfield's operation wasn't just based on muscle and intimidation. They had strategic placement. They had people in key positions guiding decisions their way. In early 2024, a name emerged that sent shockwaves through Cape Town's political establishment: Malusi Bowie, the city's human settlements. Mayoral committee member, the very official responsible for overseeing housing projects, the gatekeeper meant to protect public funds, was allegedly in Stanfield and Johnson's pocket. The evidence painted a damning picture. Between January 2019 and March 2023, with Bowie's alleged assistance, Stanfield and Johnson had secured tenders worth approximately 850 million rands, about $50 million. Their reach extended far deeper into the government than anyone had imagined. Financial records revealed that Stanfield had been paying for the education of Bowie's 3 children, a revelation that drew gasps when mentioned in court. Text messages and emails showed ongoing communication between Bowie and the couple, with explicit discussions about tender allocations and competitor eliminations. In September 2024, Bowie was arrested alongside several co-accused, including other municipal officials and Stanfield associates. The charges were comprehensive: fraud, corruption, money laundering, and racketeering. During his bail hearing, prosecutors described him as the inside man who opened the vault. Unlike Stanfield and Johnson, Bowie was granted bail set at $250,000 with strict conditions. The date for his trial was set for March 2025, with prosecutors confident they had built an airtight case. While Stanfield and Johnson remained behind bars awaiting trial, their empire didn't simply dissolve, it imploded violently. The power vacuum created by their absence triggered a wave of revenge killings that ripped through Cape Town's gang territories. Without the couple's protection, their associates and family members became targets in a brutal gang war. On March 13, 2023, Simon Stanfield, Ralph's blood cousin, was down while sitting in his car in Delft near Blikkiesdorp. Witnesses reported seeing multiple approach the vehicle and at least a dozen before calmly walking away. The violence didn't end there. On November 4th, 2023, another Stanfield relative, near Stanfield Stevens, was in Valhalla Park, just 10 kilometers from where Simon had been. The message was clear. The Stanfield family was being systematically eliminated. Police investigators linked these to an ongoing war between Ralph Stanfield and rival gang leader Jerome Donkey Boyson. Earlier that year, 2 of Boyson's sons, Joel and Janino, had been wounded in targeted attacks allegedly ordered by Stanfield before his arrest. As for Stanfield and Johnson, they still remain in custody. The case has been postponed multiple times, with the next court appearance scheduled for later this month. Their empire, built on fear and corruption, has crumbled. Their reign is over.